In October 2020, a single share of Zoom costs $568. The entire company is worth $159 billion. More than IBM, more than General Electric, more than Ford and Volkswagen combined. Today, that same share trades around $100, and the company has lost more than $130 billion in value, 82% of what it was once worth. The strange thing is not the fall. The pandemic ended, we get that. The strange thing is the other part. Zoom did almost nothing wrong. The product was still the best in the market. The founder cut his own salary by 98% before laying off a single person. And facing the biggest security crisis in the company's history, he froze all development for 90 days to fix it. Zoom's own CEO apologized live on YouTube for more than 2 hours straight. The enterprise customer base kept growing year after year.
And here is the hidden system that swept everything else away.
Your product can objectively be the best in the market and still lose if a giant decides to bundle a similar one for free inside the package your customers already pay for.
Today, we're talking about Zoom. As always, at the end, we'll cover the business lessons of this story. And this episode is especially relevant if you've ever thought about building something that Microsoft, Google, or Amazon could bundle for free inside their product. To understand how Zoom ended up worth $159 billion, we have to go back to 1995, to a small city in the Chinese province of Shandong. An engineer in his mid-20s named Eric Yuan is hearing Bill Gates talk about the internet through the book The Road Ahead that is going around the world. Gates predicts that the internet is going to change everything. Yuan doesn't fully understand yet what the internet is, but he does understand one thing. If Gates is right, Silicon Valley is where he needs to be. And here begins the first hidden lesson of this story, even though almost nobody tells it this way. Yuan doesn't make it to Silicon Valley on the first try, nor the second, nor the third. He applies for a US visa and gets rejected. He tries again and gets another no. He tries a third time with the same result. The fourth, fifth, sixth, 7th, and 8th applications also all come back rejected. That's 8 straight rejections over 2 full years, until the 9th application, in 1997, is finally approved. Yuan arrives in San Jose with very basic English and a single asset. He knows how to write code. He's hired at a startup called WebEx, which was trying to invent something that back then sounded like science fiction: video meetings over the internet between companies. Yuan is one of the founding engineers. Over the next 14 years, he grows his team from 10 engineers to more than 800, and revenue from 0 to $800 million a year. In March 2007, Cisco, the networking equipment giant, buys WebEx for $3.2 billion. Yuan becomes Cisco's VP of engineering. And this is where the story could have ended quietly. Yuan is already a multimillionaire. He has a huge position at one of the largest tech companies in the world. He could retire at 40 and play golf. But something happens. Yuan talks to WebEx customers every day, and they all say the same thing. The product is slow. Calls drop. Video quality is bad. Setting up a meeting requires downloading plugins and praying. A wonderful experience. Yuan goes back to Cisco's table and proposes something radical. Rebuild WebEx from scratch. Mobile optimized, one-click join with no heavy downloads. Cisco says no. They have market leadership, sales are growing, the numbers add up. Why change what's working? For Cisco's executives, rebuilding a product that generated $800 million a year was an absurd risk. And nobody wants to be the executive who touches what isn't broken. But Yuan saw it differently. He knew that what wasn't broken today was going to be broken tomorrow, as soon as someone outside did what he was proposing to do inside. In 2011, Yuan resigns. And then something extraordinary happens for such an unglamorous exit. 40 engineers from WebEx and Cisco quit their jobs to follow him. Without a guaranteed salary, without a company valuation, without a product yet, without even a name, just because they trust him. They name the new company SASB, which they soon rebrand to something easier to remember: Zoom. Yuan could have launched a quick beta in 6 months to start billing. He doesn't. He spends 18 months without shipping anything to market, building the video engine from scratch. The obsession is one, that it works on a slow connection, that nothing needs to be installed, that a single click puts you inside the meeting. The product ships in 2012. And here's the curious part. For years, Zoom makes almost no noise in the press. No spectacular funding rounds. No front-page headlines. It just keeps adding enterprise customers who try the product, see that it works better than WebEx, and switch over without anyone in the tech press noticing. By 2019, the result is brutal. 50% of Fortune 500 companies, the list of the 500 largest companies in the United States, are already paying for Zoom as their internal communication tool. 50%. And Zoom is profitable, something almost impossible for a tech startup of that age. Wall Street smells something unique. On April 18, 2019, Zoom goes public on NASDAQ at $36 per share. In the first hours, the stock jumps 80%. It closes the first day at $62, 72% above the IPO price. Total valuation, $15.9 billion.
Pay close attention to this moment.
Because here is the pattern that separates Zoom from almost every startup debuting in its era. This is not a product with 3 months of cash left desperately looking for investors. It's an already profitable company that goes public because it can, not because it needs to. The difference between those two things determines almost everything that comes next.
And here, before the pandemic, before any viral explosion, Zoom's stock is already flying on its own. In January 2020, it reaches $150 per share, multiplying the IPO valuation by 4 in less than a year. The company has 10 million daily users. Growth is healthy, orderly, vertical. And then, in March 2020, the entire world locks itself at home. Zoom's daily users go from 10 million to 200 million in less than a month. Teachers, grandmothers, therapists, entire concerts. Everyone discovers the word Zoom at the same time. The company, which had been a well-kept secret between IT departments, becomes critical infrastructure of the planet overnight. But the success comes with a giant problem. Zoom bombings appear. Strangers sneaking into meetings to shout obscenities or sabotage high school classes. The FBI issues alerts. And then something worse appears. The Citizen Lab at the University of Toronto discovers that Zoom's encryption keys are routed through servers in China, even for meetings between European or American users. And also that Zoom had been advertising end-to-end encryption for years, a system where not even the company itself can read the messages, when technically that wasn't true. Yuan does something different. On April 1, 2020, he publishes a public message on the Zoom blog announcing that they are freezing all development for 90 days to focus the entire team on fixing security. The next day, he apologizes live for more than 2 hours.
This looks like a crisis. And it is. But it's also one of the cleanest communication plays of the decade. When everyone expects you to hide, stopping the growth machine to fix what's broken buys you a credibility that money cannot.
But the market decides to reward all of that. On October 19, 2020, the stock hits its all-time high, $568.34. The company is worth $159 billion. And just when success seems unstoppable, something happens that nobody sees coming. On November 9, 2020, Pfizer announces that its vaccine works. Zoom's stock falls in a single day from $500 to $403, almost 20%. The market has just said, out loud, what nobody wanted to hear. Zoom was a pandemic company, and the real problem enters. Microsoft includes Teams for free inside Office 365, which practically every company in the world is already paying for. Google does the same with Meet inside Workspace. Buying Zoom means buying something your competitors already have bundled at no extra cost. Zoom's revenue growth collapses from 326% to 55%, then to 7%, then to 3% in just 3 years. And then the symbolic moment happens. In early 2024, Microsoft Teams crosses 320 million monthly active users, leaving Zoom clearly behind in the enterprise market. Yuan reacts. In February 2023, he publishes another message on the Zoom blog, announcing that he is laying off 1,300 employees, 15% of the workforce, and that he himself is cutting his salary by 98% for the next fiscal year, from $301,000 down to $10,000, plus giving up his entire bonus. The rest of the executives take a 20% pay cut and also forfeit their bonuses. Yuan admits, "I grew the company too fast during the pandemic. I made mistakes." And 6 months later, one of the strangest moves in recent labor history happens. In August 2023, Zoom, the company whose product was the engine of remote work during the pandemic, orders its own employees to come back to the office 2 days a week. The company that sold remote work to the world cancels remote work inside its own workforce. Then Yuan tries the last possible move. In November 2024, he publishes a blog post titled, "Allow us to reintroduce ourselves," announcing that the company is dropping the word video from its legal name. They are no longer Zoom Video Communications. They are Zoom Communications. He launches an integrated AI assistant, AI Companion, that prepares meetings, summarizes them, and prioritizes tasks. He tries to stop being the video calls company and become the AI-powered work platform. Today, in 2026, the stock trades around $100, 82% below the pandemic peak. The company is still profitable, and bills around $4.665 billion a year, with nearly 200,000 enterprise customers. But growth has settled around 3% per year, far from the pandemic numbers. Let's go to the lessons.
The most expensive trap in any business is confusing a good month with a good model.
Zoom hired thousands of people during the pandemic, assuming the usage would stick. When the world went back to in-person, that headcount was excess, and 15% had to be laid off. For an entrepreneur, if a viral campaign, an exceptional customer, or an unusually good season brings you a brutal month, that is not the basis to hire anyone permanently or sign a bigger lease. The practical rule is to always separate extraordinary revenue, the one-offs, the ones that depend on something you don't control, from recurring revenue. Structural decisions are made only on the recurring side.
And here goes the second one.
The founder's sacrifice is the only currency that buys loyalty when things go bad.
When Zoom had to lay off, Yuan cut his salary by 98% before touching anyone on the team. For an entrepreneur, this is literal. If your company has to tighten its belt, you tighten yours first, and visibly. Asking the team for cuts while you keep your own salary, company car, or expenses destroys in 1 week a loyalty that took years to build. And that loyalty is the only thing you have left when you can't compete on pay with the big company down the street.
The third one. What passes as flexible marketing in a small company becomes deceptive. Advertising with legal consequences in a big one.
Zoom advertised end-to-end encryption for years without it being technically true. While they were small, it didn't matter. When 200 million daily users showed up and an external lab uncovered the deception, fines, class actions, and the loss of enterprise trust arrived together. For an entrepreneur, every exaggeration on your website, your landing page, or your sales pitch is a bomb with a timer tied to your success. If you never grow, it never goes off. If you grow, it does. So whatever you can't technically prove, don't claim it. And if you already claimed it, fix it now. And we arrive at the last lesson. It's probably the hardest one to accept.
If your product can turn into a free feature inside a giant's bundle, you don't compete on price.
You diversify, or you disappear.
Zoom took almost 3 years to accept that Microsoft Teams and Google Meet, free inside Office and Workspace, were going to eat their enterprise market. By the time they finally tried to pivot, chat, phone, docs, AI, name change, they had already lost 82% of their stock market value. For an entrepreneur who is starting out or planning a product, before choosing your offer, ask yourself honestly if Microsoft, Google, Amazon, or Meta could add it for free tomorrow inside something their customers already pay for. If the answer is yes, you have to build from day one something the giant cannot easily copy. A deep integration with another platform, a very specific vertical use case, or a direct relationship with your customer that the giant doesn't have.
Because, in the end, in markets where your product is just one more among many similar ones, the best doesn't win.
The one already included in the bill the customer pays, without thinking, does.